Okay. Hey, everybody. It looks like I'm actually figuring out the technology a little bit, which is really kind of exciting. Because in the beginning it was a little confusing, but I think I'm starting to get it. Definitely getting a little older. Looks like we have some people on the live already. This is basically a general Q&A. I don't really have like a list of questions to work off of right now. I think what I'm going to start doing is asking people to pre-submit questions, and then that way, if you've got a specific question that you want answered, you can do that. So in the chat, if folks who are on have a specific question, if you want to go ahead and you can go ahead and ask it, and we can start talking about that. If not, I'll probably just start rambling about something. So because I'm pretty good at that. So while I wait for you guys to answer questions, I'll kind of let you know a little bit about some of the stuff I've been doing. We just wrapped up through Canine Detection Collaborative, intentional handling and hide setting. So I was co-teaching with Robin Grubel from Canine Census Foundation and Crystal Wing, CB Canine. Crystal's our play guru, and Robin and I were doing the detection portion. It was really, really cool. Actually, we had a mix of both Nosework handlers and human remains detection handlers. And it was really, really fun to see everybody kind of learn from each other and everything. It was a really great group of handlers. I think everybody made some incredible progress, which absolutely, that was so much fun to see. So that just wrapped up. That was last week. That's the reason why we didn't have a live last week, because we had 17 handlers that we were teaching, and it was definitely, I was exhausted in a very good way. So that's why we didn't have a live last week. But, assuming that I don't have, something like that going on, I've loved doing these. These are kind of fun. So, hi, Lynn. How are you? Okay, we have a question here. Renee says, I have my first NW3 next month. Could you suggest some non-outcome oriented goals for me to have in mind? I love that you asked about non-outcome oriented goals for an NW3, because I have to say that is probably one of the biggest things that get in the way of NW3 handlers, especially at that level, is the goal, or the outcome oriented goal. And the reason is because at that level, you're at this transition point, right? Between, when you kind of know how many hides there are and then moving up into the upper levels. It's like NW3 is kind of that transition point. And to get out of the level, you have to get 3 titles. And it's like, and you're so excited because you want to get to elite because you keep hearing how much fun it is, which, by the way, that's true. It is that much fun. So, elite is kind of like it's your reward for getting through NW3. But that said, I love NW3. I love it. It is the level where you bang crap out, and you learn, and you start to become a team member with a teammate with your dog. You really start to learn how to call finish, right? You start to learn that because, at NW3, it's a range of hides, right? It's not really an unknown number. It's a range. It's 0 to 3. It's a range. And it gives you that basic skill set to be able to say finish with confidence. By the way, I have to put a plug in, doing a webinar tomorrow, first of 2 parts on calling finish with confidence. It is a repeat, but from like several years ago. So it's not, it hasn't been repeated very recently. And that's through FenziDogSportsAcademy.com. And that's tomorrow night. It is getting recorded, but if you're interested, sign up for that. But the hard part is that if you're an NW3, you can get so invested in wanting to get that title that what I see happens with a lot of handlers is they start to overcompensate, and they start to worry that they're missing hides. The biggest challenge and the biggest kind of like roadblock to a lot of NW3 handlers is the fear of missing a hide. Now, this is also when handlers are starting to really kind of learn, to read their dogs and everything. And then when they're afraid, they take that and then they're kind of afraid of missing a hide. And you put those two together, it can get in your head. And this is how the handler manufactures a hide in their head. And what happens is when you manufacture a hide in your head, guess what happens, right? You call alert at the wrong time and poof, you get a no. And then you're like, oh no, I have 5 more searches. And then poof, you get another no, and then you can't get a leg. So, it really gets into the head. So what I would say is instead of this really goes back to your question because you're asking about non-outcome oriented goals. And outcome oriented goals could be number one, a title, right? Which titling means that you're going to find all the hides and you're going to be perfect. And, like that sort of thing. And if we get into our heads that our outcome oriented goal would be to find all the hides, it can actually drive the wrong behavior psychologically in our heads. So probably a really good non-outcome oriented goal could be to I don't even want to say to get no nos. It's not even that. It's really to pay attention to your dogs, change behavior, and be present enough to let them fully commit to a hide, right? That could be one. And that's kind of a long one, but it could be even to just stay present, to be present and in the now. That's actually a really good one. Be present and in the now with your dog. Because if you're present and in the now with your dog, you're less likely to be thinking about what happened in the search that just happened, right? Because sometimes, if we have a search and maybe it didn't, we're questioning, like, I thought I saw a change of behavior over there in the, by the chair in the corner, I'm making this up. That can get in your head. And then you can be like, oh, you start reading into things and jumping the gun. Another thing could be if you had a no in the previous search. When you get that in your head, it can make you kind of swing the pendulum a little bit. And if you do that, then you get to be like a little overly cautious or, and it can get in your head. So I think a really, really great non-outcome oriented goal is actually to just stay as present as possible in that search. Take every search standing on its own. Another good non-outcome oriented goal could be to smile at your dog during the entire search. And I know that sounds a little corny. But the really cool part about that is if you smile when you search, you actually feel good and it makes you feel optimistic. That's a good one. These are just things that actually to avoid the no, this is all about avoiding the no. Another good non-outcome oriented goal could be to breathe in and then breathe out before you call alert each time. And the reason why I say that is that can help the handler to avoid the blurt alert, or what I like to call alert vomit. Because once that alert comes out and you didn't really mean it, you can't take it back. Right? It's like alert, no. If you've ever had that situation where you call alert and then you say no for the judge, it happens. It's happened to me. It doesn't happen to me as often anymore because I do and I think about it, I'm a little bit more present than I used to be. And that's just with experience, by the way. But I remember, oh my gosh, I remember that happening where I'm like literally saying alert and no at the same time for the judge. And I'm like, I knew that wasn't it. And it is happened. And it's not uncommon. It's actually a very common occurrence, especially with newer handlers trialing and stuff like that. So giving yourself the non-outcome oriented goal of breathing in and breathing out before you call alert can be another good one. These are, I would be looking at it this way because all of these things, when you start thinking about going into your first NW3, can actually be a really great way of helping you to have fun. And I'm so excited for you because that level is a blast. It's one of these things where sometimes people don't feel like it's a blast when they're in it. But I've gone through that level with 6 dogs, I think 6 dogs at this point. And I enjoy it. I enjoy it. bug. It's the level where the best thing to do is just learn everything you can at the NW3 level, so that you can take all that beautiful learning and observation and education, and then you apply that to elite, and elite is a blast. Okay, we have another question. So anyway, good luck, Renee. Let's see. Going for AKC Master Interior Cues this weekend. I'm having trouble. She's got a 17-inch Sheltie. So basically, your Sheltie is actually a little taller than my mini Aussie. Y is actually 15 inches. Telling when an area is really blank, or if she just isn't hitting an odor cone. Easy to see when she is. And I think, so the blank area behavior, there's a lot of, so I like to try to think about blank areas, the behavior, that is, it's not an absence of behavior. So I just want to be super clear on that. Blank areas, you don't have an absence of behavior. You actually have a lot of behaviors that happen. So some of those things, these are things that I would definitely look for. Some of those things are, you ever see, you're searching with your dog and they give you kind of the side eye, like every so often they do just kind of like check in with you, and they'll start doing that when there's nothing to find. And then, so when you have a blank area, that could just be kind of a little bit of a side eye, like every so often. When I start to see that check in, I'm like, this, we could be having some blank area behavior here. Another thing that you might start seeing is random pop-ups. And, with a dog that's a 17-inch dog, it's a fairly short dog. My mini Aussie, who finished, he's 14 years old now, but last year he finished as elite champion at 13 years old. He is a 15-inch tall dog. And for a dog like that, what happens is to be able to catch and work that odor, they have to pop up a lot. And because all the odor kind of traps above their heads and everything. But what's important to know is a lot of the pop-ups for the shorter dogs are actually just, they're just checking. So what you want to be able to do is to see, is that checking behavior, or is that I'm up and I'm looking for odor behavior? And you'll see a little bit of a difference in that case. Checking behavior, the dog just goes pop up and down, right? Up and down. And once they get an odor, you're going to check it, and then they take a moment, and then they come back down. So there's a little bit of a hesitation usually when you start to see pop-up behavior with odor. Otherwise, it could just be kind of that random pop-up, because you will see, and this goes really for tall dogs too, is that one of the blank area behaviors that you're going to see a lot is checking up. And it's really kind of like, because they haven't found any odor kind of on their plane, when they're checking the next plane up. And what you're going to see is, in that case, it tends to be very randomly spaced. It's not focused in on one spot. So that can be a little bit of a difference. You're also going to take a look at your dog's pace. When your dog is in a blank area, this also goes for, by the way, if you're clearing areas, blank area behavior can be very similar to I've found all the hides behavior. As a matter of fact, it's almost identical, which is really cool, because once your dog starts doing this, you may be getting about ready to call finish, right? So what you could be seeing is your dog's pace. So the speed at which they move through the search area. Watch for the pattern of footfalls. When I start to see the pattern of the footfalls is pretty regular, it's got it, like if you were to close your eyes and you kind of like have a tempo, right? It's pretty regular. And that usually happens in the absence of odor. When you can kind of like picture like tapping up footfalls. And when you have odor, right, it starts to change. So I look at the pattern of the footfalls, and I like think about it almost as like, is the tempo changing? Is it the same? Do. That's odor, right? When it starts to change a little bit, you start to see a little bit of odor behavior. These are all things that that I would be looking for. So hopefully that's helpful, Lynn. I just, blank odor behavior, tell me when an area is really blank or she isn't hitting an odor cone. And here's the thing though, if the hides are well set, if you get her into the downwind of where odor could be, and she doesn't give you anything, if your dog has focus and hide commitment, there's nothing there. Again, you may want to check out the webinar tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be on focus and hide commitment. And next week is part 2. And that's going to be on the handler side. But tomorrow's focus and hide commitment, because if you can have that focus and hide commitment, if you have that and you've built that and you get your dog downwind of all potential odor, if they don't hit anything, if they're not responding to anything, there's nothing there. Really important things to do. So that's a great question. You guys asked a couple of really great questions here. And if anybody has other questions, we're only about 15 minutes in. Okay, so looks like Lynn has, oh, by the way, Susan, I'm really glad that was really helpful for you as well. Lynn, it looks like you have a follow-up. She doesn't really pop up to check stuff unless I ask her to look up and down. Great work ethic. She would keep checking the blank area forever if I asked her to. Great idea about the pace. I'll look. Yeah, if you have the kind of dog that would just keep searching, Powder is one of these. And sometimes it can be really hard because Powder, my yellow lab, my yellow female, her intensity doesn't change. Because that's the other thing. Like a lot of times when you see a dog in a blank area, you see less intensity. And I definitely see that in blank area with a lot of dogs. And actually, I also see that after the dog has found all the hides, I see the intensity go down. So those are things that I'm looking for. And it's really interesting with Powder. Like I don't see a lot of that. And part of it is she's just a really intense dog. So sometimes when you have a more intense dog, and Shelties can be intense, Shelties can be busy. When you have kind of that busier dog or that more intense dog, it can be hard to tell when either they haven't found odor or that they're done, because they keep that level of intensity up. So looking at the pace and the pace of the footfalls, and really paying attention to your search area, that can really honestly make the biggest difference. The other thing is to also think about how long does it usually take for your dog to get an odor and to find a hide, depending upon the search area size. And between the search area size and how complex the search area is, if you've been in there a little while and your dog hasn't given you and hasn't really started to really source a hide, there's probably nothing there, right? So I'd be thinking of it that way also, because it is just, given how your dog usually works, if they go into a search area and they get downwind of something, are they going to solve a hide within 30 seconds? Are they going to solve a hide within 10 seconds? Are they going to, probably more than that, the more complex hides, 30 seconds, a minute, even honestly, even the most complex hides at the highest levels of the sport, a lot of times, like a minute per hide is I think that's pretty standard. The dogs can do. So, I would kind of think about that. If you're in there for a minute and a half and you're really not seeing anything and you've been downwind of stuff, there's probably nothing there. So I kind of think of it that way as well. But that's an awesome question. Really awesome question. Also, since we're here, I want to also put a plug in. Classes start on Friday, by the way, guys. We have NW120. Since I'm waiting for more questions. So I just figured I'd tell you guys this. NW120, which gets dogs after they get on odor, gets them searching all the elements. That starts. We've got NW185, which is actually a really awesome class because it's foundational and it's got setups related to foundations that drive good searching behaviors. That's an awesome class. NW185, that's green dog setups, but it doesn't really have to be for green dogs. It's just foundational setups. They're foundational setups for dogs that will help you to kind of make sure that you're not building in stuff into your hide setting patterns that you don't want. And then NW440, which is my spectacular sourcing. That's all about making sure that the dog gets all the way to source. So that is also all those classes. They're starting on Friday. You have 24/7 access, and class is only $65 for 6 weeks. Kind of amazing. Prices haven't changed since I started with the school. Oh gosh, I've been teaching at the school since 2015. And I was a student in the school for another 2 years before that. And I have to tell you, prices haven't changed in like 12 years. So it's a really great price. So anyway, that is going on. I've got the webinar tomorrow, Facebook Live today. So a lot of cool stuff going on. Okay. I don't have any other questions from you guys yet. You're going to have to start throwing them out at me. But these are so far, I mean, what we've been talking about is really related to clearing areas and NW3 and that sort of thing. Which is always, a great thing to kind of think about. The essential part of this is also learning how to read your dog. And that's another big piece of it. I think I've got some thoughts about stuff I can put out about reading your dog that might be helpful for folks, like specific to certain behaviors that the dog may show you that can tell you about the hide itself. And then you can kind of use that to help inform what the odor is doing and really being able to bring that together. So that's kind of, a little bit of a thought that I have going on. Otherwise, oh gosh, I'm busy with my puppy. Love my puppy. He's so wonderful. He's 15 weeks old right now, and he's just absolutely fabulous. Plan is to make him a human remains detection dog. So he's not going to be on Nosework odor. Right now, I mean, I've got mostly my Nosework dogs are Powder and Brava. They're both summit level dogs. I'm sure I'll get another Nosework dog at some point. So, we have more stuff coming up. Okay. All right. I think we need more challenging. Let's see. Renee says, I go to a weekly class where we just do a couple of easy interior searches. How can I make these searches more challenging for my dog or myself, or otherwise optimize class time? If they're easy interior searches, depending on the hide, what you may decide to do is try to think about, can you start your search in a different location? So if the dog, maybe you want to start more where the dog's maybe has to work a little bit longer before they get to the hide, that sort of thing. If you go to a class and it's just like a couple of like straightforward stuff, that can be a little tough. Unless, you can ask your instructor if there's like another like area that maybe you can clear first and then move in where you have the easier hide. You could always do it that way. So you could also get kind of a little bit of a blank area space before you go in. So those are just some things that you might want to consider. Let's see. Oh, yay, Barb. That sounds great. Webinar tomorrow on Confident Alert starting August 1st. Okay. Entered our first trial in June, and he earned his 3 novice titles in AKC. Fabulous. Let's see. Lilibet says, I have a student whose dog automatically sat when she found a hide, and the student reported that. Now the dog sits when it finds odor, not really sourcing, more fringing. That is the biggest issue with sits for alerts. Here's the thing about trained final responses, which by the way, I am a big proponent of trained final response. So don't read into that. Trained final response is really easy to train badly. It's really hard to keep it going and to keep the precision. That's the hard part. The easy part is training the behavior. The hard part is maintaining your criteria going forward, which is exactly what's happening with your student. Because the problem is the dog got a sit, dog got rewarded for a sit. Now the dog believes that the sit produces the cookie, not the sourcing. Try to need my caffeine. If we think about the behavior chain of the searching, which by the way, this is also an NW440, that's the sourcing class that I'm teaching. That's really what this is. This is really what we're talking about. We're talking about a sourcing problem. If we think about the behavior chain of searching, which is search, locate, report. Okay, I used to use different words, and now I'm on board with I think this is the Steve White terminology, and Robin uses this terminology, which is fabulous. Search, locate, report. So the dog searches. They're hunting. They're looking for that scent cone, right? And when they get to locate, that's when they move into the locate portion of the behavior chain. Is when the dog has the change of behavior. They've encountered odor, right? That's the locate portion. Now that they've encountered odor, now they have to problem solve and get to the hide. That's all the locate part of the behavior chain. Once they get to the hide and they decide that they're at the hide, now it moves into the report part of the behavior chain. At this point, the dog now communicates purposefully to the handler that the location of the hide. That's the report. Now, what you're finding a little bit is that the dog has overemphasized the report portion of the behavior chain. Now, to fix it, you actually have to de-emphasize the report part and you have to emphasize locate. So in this case, first of all, you have to have a very clear marker. Markers are really important to be able to fix this. You got to have a clear marker system. And so, you may want to take a look at your student and see how clear is their marker. Do they go, yes, good dog? Or do they not give a marker? They just move in and put their hand in their pocket. They got their hand in their pocket as the dog's starting to get close to the hide. All these things that become pre-cues that tell the dog, go ahead and give the trained final response. So you have to kind of do a little bit of an observation there and see kind of does the handler have really good communication? Because if the handler doesn't have good communication, it's going to be really hard to fix. Then the other thing is that you have to have that clear communication, but now we've got to lop off the whole report part of the behavior chain, break it down to locate. Now, but we have to make that locate really easy because otherwise the dogs are going to get an odor and they're just going to slam their butt down, right? So we need to make that hide location where we put it very clear to source. Things like under the corner of a table or something where it's like there's a localized, or on a wheel, right? Like a cart wheel or something, like the wheel of a cart or something very localized. Something where the odor is actually pretty easy to get to. The other thing is that I'd be thinking about your airflow, starting the dog upwind. Let's take away the aspect of the odor pool. Start the dog upwind, then they get that little hook in, and then mark for nose on source. The sit's not going to go away. You got to get the reps in for marking for nose on source. You get marking that dog for nose on source, start them upwind. They start to understand, oh, this is really what gets paid. You can fix it pretty easily, but that's the way you got to do it. That will fix it though. And, but it does take some time, but that's how you fix it. All right. We have a couple more minutes. Ellen, let's see. Trying to get back in the swing of training. Dogs seem to have picked up. Okay. Having trouble prioritizing what I should be training for NW2. And your other dog Butter is ready for NW1, except for being around strangers. I know that, but Beamer, inaccessible and distractions. I know, but what else am I missing? I actually, with NW2, it's, the dog needs to have a little bit, they've got to have a little bit of the complexity of the hides. It's not, going to be terribly complex. The hides aren't going to be super converged. I would be making sure that you've got, the good transitions between the hides, that you can take a look at the search area and see what area haven't we been to, right? Making sure, and it's still all the same foundations, right? That the dog has focus and the dog has hide commitment. It's funny, those two things are always come up, right? Focus and hide commitment, right? And if your dog is focused and your dog has hide commitment, and your dog understands, just, some complexity in the hides, like if there's, inaccessible or you're dealing with, a little bit more distracting environment, you can do the transitions between the hides. When you have that sort of situation, it's not that, it's not going to be a huge issue. But I would say that's one of the big differences, I think, from NW1 to NW2 is that now the dog has to have increased focus and increased hide commitment because the searches are, a little bit more challenging. The hides are not quite as straightforward. Having that focus and that high commitment, the drive to source is really going to be kind of the big deal there. Let's see. Lynn, I think this is probably going to be our last question. There's a follow-up question. If they are fringing, should we ask them to show me where after they report? Nope. Or just get them to locate accurately before they report. We want an accurate location, and we don't want to think about the report. We're going to forget the sit right now. Just forget the sit. Mark for nose on source. So, so that was Lynn. Lynn, I think, had the follow-up question to a little bit. So it was a little bit's question, but Lynn was asking the follow-up. Yeah, if the dog is fringing, at that point, no show me's. There's only one truly, there's only one time you should ever ask your dog show me. And that is if you have a refined dog, you're doing search and rescue, and the dog has found the human, come back, given your TFR, and you have to ask them to run back out to the human so that they can ping pong and lead you to the subject. That is the only time the word show me should ever be uttered by any handler of any dog, right? That's really the only legitimate show me ever. And you don't want to repeat the report. You really want to be thinking about what are you emphasizing? Are you emphasizing report? Or are you emphasizing locate? If we have a dog that's fringing, we need to emphasize locate, because we need the dog to understand, to truly earn reinforcement, you got to be precise, right? Report, yeah, we can always add that back on. That's easy to add back on. Yeah, I think we're going to stop there. I know there is another question. We're at 31. Well, maybe I can kind of answer it, but it's probably going to be the last question. And then we'll wrap that up. And then I would say if anybody has any additional questions next week, we'll cover those. Dixie, my dog paws containers that aren't odor, but doesn't fully indicate. Should I move her away in a trial or wait out the pawing to see if I get a full alert or if she moves on? If you're waiting out, that means you're stopping. Stopping is going to make the pawing worse. If your dog has a foot alert, it probably means that your dog is thinking out loud. So then they're like, that's not it. I would definitely not try to wait her out. I would keep moving. If you keep moving, she comes off of it. It's probably not odor. I would just keep moving. It's one of these things but if you stand still and you wait, she's just going to commit to it, and then you're going to get a false. So, anyway, that would be how I would answer that. And Lynn, I'm glad to hear that your coach agrees with me. Yeah, no show me's. Show me's are like, stabbed to the heart. Like, no show me's. All right, guys, we're at about a half an hour, and that was kind of my plan here. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully it's been helpful. Don't forget the webinar tomorrow. Actually, I can go ahead and drop the link to sign up for that webinar right there in the chat, so you can have that. I just have to get back to it. Here we go. So here you go. That is to sign up for the webinar. It's right there in the chat. You can sign up for that. That's going to be Calling Finish with Confidence. This week, again, we're focusing on building focus and high commitment. And then next week, we're going to talk about the handler, because it's like a 2-part webinar. That's what tomorrow is at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. It is getting recorded and it goes into the library. So make sure you sign up for that. And otherwise, everybody, I hope you have a great day, and I hope all of your searching has been fun, and just go out and enjoy your dogs. All right, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.